What do you want to achieve in Formula One?
Being world champion.
Yeah, what a day. It'll stay with me forever.
Just already stop about this because we had so many questions about this.
Something strange is happening behind the scenes at Red Bull, and according to growing paddock talk, the FIA has quietly opened questions nobody outside the team was supposed to hear about. Not a scandal, not yet. Just a series of small, uncomfortable conversations happening away from the cameras. And the strange part? Verstappen already seems to know. While the rest of the grid keeps talking about upgrades and championship momentum, Max has been unusually quiet. Calm in interviews, short answers, the kind of calm that, with this driver, usually means something is coming. Because normally Verstappen says exactly what he thinks, good or bad. Lately, he's been saying almost nothing at all. And in Formula One, silence from Max Verstappen is never just silence. If you're new here, welcome, and consider subscribing because we bring you F1 drama like this every single week. The stuff that's happening quietly while everyone else is watching the timing screens. All right, let's get into it. So what exactly is the FIA looking at? According to people close to the situation, the focus keeps coming back to one specific area: the rear wing. Not the wing itself, but how it behaves at high speed. For years now, the FIA has been chasing what people in the paddock call the mini DRS effect, a tiny gap that opens between the upper and lower elements of the rear wing under load, just enough to bleed off drag on the straights without anyone officially activating DRS. On camera, it's barely visible. On data, it shows up as a car that's mysteriously fast in a straight line, despite running more wing than its rivals. Red Bull has been one of several teams flagged for this exact behavior before, and new, stricter load tests were introduced specifically to close that loophole. But according to sources familiar with recent scrutineering sessions, Red Bull's rear wing has been pulled aside for extra inspection more than once in the last few races, quietly, without any of it becoming public. And here's the part nobody's talking about yet. One of those inspections reportedly happened the same weekend Verstappen set the fastest speed trap time of the entire grid. The car has passed every test it's been given. That's not in question. What's being looked at is something harder to prove: whether the wing is designed to behave one way under the static FIA test, and a slightly different way once it's loaded up at 320 kilometers per hour on track. That's the part that makes this so difficult for the FIA. A part can be completely legal in the garage and still flex in a way that creates an advantage on track because the test conditions and race conditions aren't identical. Proving intent, that a team designed something specifically to behave differently once raced, is a much higher bar than just measuring a wing on a bench. And that's reportedly the exact gray area this investigation is sitting in right now. But the timing of how this whole thing started is where it gets even more interesting. Because flex tests are run on every car, every weekend, it's nothing unusual on its own. But the moment Verstappen started looking dangerous again on the straights, specifically out-dragging cars that should have more raw power, rivals started asking why. According to sources inside the paddock, at least one team has already submitted data comparing Red Bull's straight-line speed to its measured downforce levels and asked the FIA directly how the numbers line up. That's reportedly what triggered the closer look at the rear wing in the first place. Here's where it gets interesting. None of this has been made public. There's no headline, no official statement, nothing on the FIA's published documents yet. Which means either this is nothing, or it's still too early for Red Bull to even respond to. And teams in that position usually do one thing first. They prepare internally before anything becomes official. Which is exactly what people close to Red Bull's technical department are now describing. Quiet internal reviews. Engineers double-checking components that were already signed off months ago. The kind of activity that doesn't happen unless someone, somewhere, asked an uncomfortable question, and one engineer reportedly described it as the team getting its story straight before anyone even asks the question publicly. And Verstappen's reaction to all of this is what makes the story so interesting. Drivers usually don't get involved in technical disputes. That's an engineer's job, not theirs. But according to people who've spent time around the team recently, Max has been more present in technical debriefs than usual, listening more, asking more questions. Not in a worried way, more in a way that suggests he's been told to stay close to it. Because if there's one thing Verstappen has learned over the years, it's that when Red Bull goes quiet, it usually means something important is being managed in the background. And this isn't the first time Red Bull has faced this kind of scrutiny either. Everyone remembers the cost cap situation a few years ago, and how long it took for that story to actually surface publicly compared to when insiders first started talking about it. By the time it became headlines, people inside the paddock had already known for weeks. And right now, several voices around the grid are saying this situation feels familiar. Not in scale, but in shape. Quiet questions first, public story later. So why would the FIA move carefully here instead of just announcing an investigation? Because accusing the reigning constructors' champion of pushing the rules too far isn't something you do lightly, especially with the championship this close. If this becomes public too early and turns out to be nothing, it looks like the FIA is targeting a specific team. But if it becomes public later and turns out to be something, it changes the entire story of this season, which is exactly why everyone close to this is choosing their words carefully right now. But while all of this stays buried, one thing keeps happening out in the open, and almost nobody's connecting it to the bigger picture. Meanwhile, on track, nothing about Red Bull's pace has slowed down. If anything, they've looked stronger the last few races than at any point this year. Verstappen has been extracting performance that, on paper, the car shouldn't be capable of. And that contrast, a car suddenly performing better right as questions are being asked about it, is exactly the kind of thing that fuels paddock suspicion, fair or not. Rival teams have noticed too. According to people familiar with conversations in the paddock, at least 2 rival technical directors have privately raised the rear wing comparison with FIA delegates in recent weeks, pointing specifically to Red Bull's top speed numbers on tracks with long straights. Not through official complaints, just quiet conversations off the record. The same kind of conversations that, historically, tend to be the first sign that a flex-related directive is being drafted. And one of those conversations reportedly happened less than 24 hours before Verstappen's car went through an unscheduled park firm check. And through all of this, Verstappen keeps doing what he always does. Racing, winning when he can, saying as little as possible when asked about anything outside the car. But people who know him well say there's a difference between Max staying quiet because there's nothing to say, and Max staying quiet because he's been told not to say anything. And right now, according to those same people, this is the second kind of quiet. If this story breaks properly, it could completely change how this season is remembered. Either Red Bull comes out clean, and Verstappen's current form becomes even more legendary because it survived an investigation. Or it doesn't, and everything Red Bull has built over the last few races gets thrown into question overnight. Either way, the next few weeks suddenly feel a lot more important than anyone expected, and Verstappen, more than anyone else in the paddock, already seems to know which version of that story is coming. If you think the FIA is finally about to catch up with Red Bull, or if you think this is just paddock noise blown out of proportion, drop your take in the comments. And if you don't want to miss how this story develops, make sure you're subscribed, because this one isn't going away quietly.